what he's saying there is that this spins towards me, and if we had a traditional righty-tighty, lefty-loosey threads, what would happen is that nut would come loose every time this turns on. Because this goes from 0 to 4,000 RPMs almost instantly. That's a lot of torque on that nut, and it would eventually loosen it, and you don't want to be the poor sucker standing here when the blade comes flying off at you. So whoever invented the table saw decided that, hey, we should put backwards threads. So now, instead of it loosening every time it gets turned on, it actually tightens. So the bolt is a little bit harder to take off than it is to put on because it's been however many cycles turned on and off. So it really puts a lot of stress on there. It's not really hard to get off, but you'll notice it is significantly harder to take off. Number 14, the riving knife. And the riving knife is actually called a splitter. Riving knife is the technical term for it. Everybody that I've ever talked to calls it a splitter. So that's why it says riving knife in parentheses, but the actual generic term for it is called a splitter. And that's what this thing is right here. I'm going to leave this out for a minute and show you what can happen with this not being in the table saw. So that's 14. The splitter should always be used. It's what prevents kickbacks. Number 13, the table saw arbor bolt has left-handed threads. I didn't really say that. I kind of explained it, but I didn't say it. The table saw arbor bolt has left-handed threads, which is backwards from normal. So I'm going to take the riving knife out, and we're going to explore what can happen without a riving knife. This is a big piece of wood. This is 10 inches wide. So if I wanted to, I could cross-cut it on here, or I could rip it. Most of the boards that you're using are not going to be this wide. So we'll use the table saw just for ripping. If we want to cut this, there's a couple things we want to watch out for. One, when we get our board from the lumber yard, we have one smooth edge and we have one rough edge. The smooth edge always needs to go against the fence. So let's say I'm going to cut this board here, and I'm going to be really careful. So I'm going to keep my hand as far away from the board of the blade as possible. What happens when I push on this board with just this edge? What do you notice happens to the edge of the board?
It tilts.
Okay, does it come away from the fence?
Yes.
All right, and now I've exaggerated that significantly, but that does happen. And now look what happens. It starts touching the table saw blade, which is spinning towards me. By the way, the teeth need to face towards me, the saw operator. This is the in-feed side of the table. What side do you think that side's called? In, that's out. So that's the out-feed side of the table. So the teeth need to face the in-feed side of the table. So as I'm cutting, now all of a sudden the back of the board is touching the back of the blade, which is spinning towards me. These teeth then are going to grab that board and go and throw it right back at me. So some people, by being extra cautious and having their hands all the way to the side, actually make it worse for themselves because they automatically are pushing the board away from the fence. That's why it's important to grab the board a little bit closer to the middle of it. Now, you don't have to be in the exact